welcome you for our third webinar for this year, Regenerating the Economy, a business webinar on the new Malta Enterprise schemes. We have passed and are now passing through a period of great turmoil. What perhaps has changed is that we are now adapting faster to changing situations. During this period of turmoil, the government's input was essential. According to my opinion, the COVID-19 pandemic was a game changer in terms of upping the dialogue between the government and key stakeholders. To this end, I would like to thank the Minister for Energy, Enterprise and Sustainable Development, Honorary Miriam Dalli, for involving us in this dialogue. A special thanks goes also to Stephen and Lou, with whom we had and we still have discussions and through whom we put forward our proposals. In this webinar we are holding today, however, we are now going to see a new generation of schemes. As I said before, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought us to rethink the way we work. Many of the schemes we are now targeting today are in this direction, towards reengineering, towards the green economy, towards the digital sector. A special thanks goes to our speakers and panelists, Mark Scicluna Bartoli, Executive Product Management and Development, and Kurt Farrugia, CEO of Malta Enterprise. I would like to thank them in advance for their contribution. All of those who are participating both on our online platform, please feel free to post your comments and questions, which will be answered by our panelists during the dedicated question and answer session. To this end, we hope that you will find this webinar useful, and I now kindly invite the Minister for Energy, Enterprise and Sustainable Development, Honorary Miriam Dalli, to make her introductory remarks.
Allow me to say thank you to Joseph Borg and to the Gozo Business Chamber, not just for organizing this webinar, but most of all for being a very active contributor to the communication process, which ultimately led to the launch of these initiatives we are discussing today. During this whole process, the Gozo Business Chamber was really a key enabler of ideas with a strong multi-sectorial reach, and I can say it was a very reliable partner. As a Minister for Enterprise, I'm very pleased to have this open and frank relationship with such an important stakeholder, as this is allowing us to tangibly support our business community in such unprecedented times. Ultimately, we all know unprecedented challenges call for unprecedented support, and this is what we have been providing to the Maltese economy in the last 14 months. However, despite of all this support, obviously we are cognizant of the sensitivity of the juncture of the economic cycle of our economy at this point in time, and we are definitely not unplugging any support to the business community. But apart from supporting the business community, we want the business community to look forward. As restrictions on our businesses are now being lifted, and as we move on to become the first European country to achieve herd immunity, obviously we are upping the game in terms of business support. And we're doing this through a three-pronged strategy. First, want to provide visibility that would allow you to plan ahead. Secondly, we want to extend the assistance for the most hard-hit businesses. And thirdly, want to stimulate investment with a clear economic direction. We know how important visibility is for all of you. You want to plan ahead in these months of economic recovery. And that is why we announced earlier in the year that the wage support will be extended till the end of the year. And any gradual and slow reduction in this measure will be planned and will be met by growth-oriented investment aid. Now, in the €20 million package that we launched, we have ensured that assistance is still granted to businesses which were hit the hardest by the March restriction. And this is why we have extended both the rent and also electricity support to these companies. But as I already mentioned, our flagship initiatives are now aimed at supporting you to invest in your own future. Obviously, in the growth of your companies, in the long-term value of your businesses, in a commercial world which has changed and is changing and requires new ways of doing businesses. So we came up with different incentives that can really help you go in that direction. So we have significantly upgraded the business reengineering scheme, which is now applicable to self-employed and micro businesses. And we also increased the level of support. So we are offering support to literally help your businesses change and grow. And we are also supporting those businesses which have been hit the hardest. And we're doing this through a new scheme aimed at restarting the business and allow entrepreneurs not to just get good advice on how they can reshape the businesses, but most of all, it will support the implementation costs of such advice. We want to be realistic. So we want to realistically and tangibly assist businesses in investing in the economic niches of the future. So we launched the Smart and Sustainability Incentive, which is aimed at providing strong financial support in the form of cash grants and tax incentives to all businesses across different sectors. We're doing this because we want them to invest in digitalization, technology, and sustainable related investments. Now, because we want Gozo to be in the driving seat of this transition towards sustainability, this scheme will ensure that investment in Gozo will be more assisted more generously than other investments. We are doing all this whilst at the same time we are extending the tax certificates by another 3-year cycle. And this is another unprecedented move. It will allow for 80 million euros of additional liquidity for our businesses. Now, in conclusion, allow me to thank all employees at Malta Enterprise for standing up to the challenge during these past pressing months. We all know how crucial their commitment was and still is to ensure that this support trickles to your businesses in time and the work involved in making all this happen. So I cannot but reiterate my appreciation to them, but also to yourselves at the Gozo Business Chamber, because your ongoing proactiveness and hard work in pursuit of our common objective, I believe, will help us ultimately make sure that we have a stronger and greener Gozo business community. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Minister, for your kind words. As a chamber, we were happy to have contributed to this process and looking forward to further contributions in the coming months. I now invite the President of the Gozo Business Chamber, Joseph Borg, to make his introductory remarks.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome all of you, those who are our members, and obviously also those others who have decided to join us this morning. First of all, I would like to extend my thanks to the Minister, the Honourable Miriam Dalli, for her introduction, but especially also for her assistance and her openness to dialogue. As a chamber, we were also part of the discussions which have led to the schemes which we are presenting today. To this end, allow me also to thank Mr. Stephen Lu from the Ministry for Energy, Enterprise and Sustainable Development, with whom we were communicating continuously and are communicating continuously. This is the third webinar that the Gozo Business Chamber is holding this year. As a chamber, we are continuously striving to find ways and means how to assist our members, and also those who are not our members, but who are following us both on Facebook and through this platform. This has been a continuous journey. We did not know when COVID started last year what was waiting for us along the way. So we made it our prerogative to do our utmost to assist everyone as much as possible. This has been our mission as of last year, and in fact, we have left these webinars open and free to everyone. This has been a period of uncertainty. This uncertainty engulfed everyone, us as businesses, and also the government in its primary role as policymaker. The past year and a half was a period of continuous discussions and meetings. Sometimes we criticized the government and expected more. However, it was a period of intense consultation and collaboration, and this was evident as the government continuously sought to assist businesses and the population at large in the best possible manner. On the 27th April of this year, a new set of measures and initiatives were announced by government to regenerate the Maltese economy, which we all have welcomed. These include, first, a renewed rent and electricity scheme, as the Minister has just mentioned, a one-time grant for businesses that will remain closed after the 10th May of this year, also the Change to Grow 2021, the Restart Incentive Scheme 2021, and obviously the Smart and Sustainable Investment Scheme of this year. But last but not least, the micro-investment tax, credit extension, which we have just heard the Minister also mention. An integral part of these schemes is the digital and the green economy. We have been asking for these schemes to be tweaked in favor of enterprises based on Gozo, and will continue to do so. Gozo has been lagging behind in the economic development when compared to the progress registered on national level, even before COVID. COVID has hit us hard, and the help our enterprises need is even greater now. I am happy that we have also roped for this webinar Mark Scicluna Bartoli from BOV, who will speak about facilitating access to finance for green investment. Thank you, Mark, for being with us this morning. A big thanks also goes to Kurt Farrugia, CEO of Malta Enterprise, who will be our main speaker today and who will be presenting these schemes. I now give the floor to Mark Scicluna Bartoli. Good morning.
Good morning, Joe. Good morning, Daniel, Kurt, and everyone. And thank you for the invite. It's much appreciated. I'm aware that obviously a number of the schemes coming out for regeneration are going to be focusing on green investments. I just wanted to give an insight a little bit to what, as Bank of Valletta, we're doing in this space. We've been working on this scheme, to be honest, even before COVID, with the idea of creating a partnership between the Maltese financial institutions, European Investment Bank, and the Maltese government. And what came out from this partnership is a EU pilot initiative. It is a first. It is being piloted in Malta, which is called the Energy Efficiency Renewable Energy Fund. Basically, this is a unique fund for a number of reasons. I'll just go through three main points of why it is unique. One, it is a fund that has blended both business and personal customers into a single fund, where previously, as you're aware, Bank of Valletta has issued a number of risk-sharing facilities over these past 10 years, which were mainly targeting businesses. And over the past 10 years, we potentially leveraged around 500 million in investments in businesses and small enterprises. This product is unique in the fact that it includes both businesses and personal customers. And the investments are in energy efficiency and renewable energy. So that is potentially the first pilot nature of the scheme in the Maltese market. The second, obviously, there is a guarantee which is being passed on to the banks. Obviously, the banks are using this guarantee to reduce the interest rate and the collateral requirements, as has previously been done in various BOV products like the Jeremy and the Jamie. So that is currently being done in the product. But as well, since the market needs maybe an extra push, particularly in the energy efficient space, what the product also gives is an interest rate subsidy. It gives an interest rate subsidy of 2% over the first 3 years, which allows an even further reduction in the interest rate in the market going forward. So that is the second pilot nature of this product, because previously products which were launched in the market with the exclusion of the COVID working capital scheme were always either a guarantee or a grant. This is a new instrument, which would be the future of EU funding instruments, where the guarantee and the grant, which is incorporated in the form of an interest rate subsidy, are blended. So this could be future financing streams coming forward. And this is where the European Investment Fund, together with the Maltese government and Bank of Valletta, are piloting a new initiative. So this is the second dimension of the scheme. The third dimension of the scheme, which is new as well, is the fact of an introduction of a capacity building training element. Now, as we have seen, the current investments in energy efficiency have remained relatively flat since 2015. The reason being most probably a general reduction in energy prices, which didn't give the required push. And so there's need of assistance. There's need of assistance in the development of deal flow, because the product is going to provide you an easy financing solution, but you need deal flow, you need project ideas to come in. And so what we have here is a capacity building where a tool is being developed, a web-based tool to help individuals and businesses understand the returns they could make on their investments if they were to do these investments. And also a degree of capacity building also for the banks to better understand investments in the energy efficiency space and renewable energy. So these are the three pilot features of this product, which are currently being piloted in Malta, with the final objective that these would then be relaunched in the new financing program that have just started 2021-2027 in the EU among a number of member states. We look forward, we have already launched how are we implementing this at a Bank of Valletta level. We have segmented the scheme into three cohorts, one for the personal customer who wants to invest, and obviously this allows him to invest without collateral and a reduced interest rate. Now we have also developed a product in the home loan space, which allows people to invest larger amounts in energy efficiency and renewables using the house as a collateral, which then allows them to get a better financing option. And in the near future, we're also looking into launching the business scheme, which should be coming out in the coming weeks. So we have segmented our offering into three groups, depending upon obviously the needs of the different segments. From my end, I'll stop there. I don't want to take too much of your time because I know Kurt has a lot of valuable information to provide us. So I will stop there. And should you need any further information, you can contact us either through our website, all the information is available, or through myself or through our contact center. So I'm open to any questions or engagement. Thank you, and I give you the floor.
Thanks, Mark, for your very valid contribution, and thanks always for always assisting us also throughout the year as a chamber. I now invite Mr. Kurt Farrugia, CEO of Malta Enterprise, to deliver his presentation.
Thank you very much. I will try to share the screen. This is always a bit tricky. I think it's on. Okay. Good. So I will very quickly go through the schemes because we've mentioned them a number of times even throughout this webinar. First of all, thank you to the Gozo Business Chamber. I won't repeat, but you've been a very valuable partner in everything we've done until now, and I am sure that our open and frank exchanges will keep improving what we offer as government, as Malta Enterprise, and I look forward to continued discussions. And thank you, Mark, for your presentation. I think it was very important to understand also what the banks have to offer, particularly your bank, in terms of important sectors that we are pushing in, as economic direction. So quickly, we did split the schemes that the Minister and the Prime Minister earlier this month have launched into basically the direct support measures, which had the scope of injecting liquidity, particularly in the short term. So those are the first schemes that we're working on immediately and will be available in the next few weeks. And then we have the incentives that are aimed at stimulating economic activity, which are the next phase of this part of the economic recovery plan. So first of all, you all know that we had already launched last year the rent support scheme, which we are still processing at the moment. We're at 90% of the process. As we've explained, this was a very manual process and laborious. So we are at the very final stages of concluding the reading through all the contracts and disbursing the funds according to the contracts that the businesses have with the tenants. So the rent scheme now will be extended by a further 50% over and above the rent assistance provided for 2020. So last year, if you remember, we had calculated over a period of 1 year, capped at 2,500 euros. So basically, for those undertakings that were closed by legal notice 90 of 2021 and 94 of 2021, it's not in the presentation, but there's also legal notice 94. They will be eligible for a further 50% over and above what they were given last year. For the new applications of those approved to get a wage supplement in 2021, those applications will be accepted. Of course, they will capped at 50% of last year's capping. So for those that had for the capping that was at 2,500 euros, that will be capped at 50% of 2,500 euros for those that were capped at 7,500. So basically those who have more than 50 employees or have more than 5 outlets, the 7,500 will be capped at half of that. Top up of electricity support scheme. In this case, the electricity support scheme will be reissued, covering June, July, and August 2021. So basically, the idea is after all businesses reopen, they will start, of course, consuming electricity. We will be taking June, July, and August as the benchmark and cover the cost of 50% of the total electricity bill. That is not different from what we did last year. This is a new scheme, a one-time grant, basically to mitigate against business loss, particularly for those businesses that have been kept closed after May 10th. And this is the scheme that is most advanced at the final stages. We've notified the European Commission and we're just expecting a green light to be in a position to disburse the 1,000 euro for all the businesses that were closed with legal notice 90 and 94 of 2021 and were kept closed after the 10th of May. Change to Grow, we've been talking about the business reengineering scheme that was launched last year. Now we've also enhanced that scheme and we are widening the criteria to include self-employed and micro enterprises. The take-up during last year was low on the business reengineering scheme, so we decided that, and this is particularly for the smaller enterprises, to include the micro enterprises that employ under 10 and also include self-employed who want to look at their business model and see whether they can change the way they operate, include new ideas to their business, and we'll be funding that advisory, and we've doubled the amount. So the intensity, the aid intensity cap was upped from 5,000 to 10,000 euros, and basically it's going to be split 50% and 50% or 60-40% according to the guidelines that we will be issuing in the next few weeks, where basically the first part will be for advisory, the second part will be cash to implement the project. And we believe, even through the very valuable feedback that we were given by the various chambers, that this can help the business to go that extra mile to be in a position to implement whatever the advisors would have advised. The Restart Incentive Scheme, this is a completely new scheme we are working on at the moment. Basically, it is for those businesses that closed down throughout the pandemic and want to give it another try and either open the business with new ideas and fresh ideas, as well as seek on how to regenerate their business. So they will be receiving tangible support for the serious challenges that they were going through. Entrepreneurs will be offered the possibility to engage professional business advisors, and we will be paying advisory costs up to 5,000 euros, which can be extended up to 10,000 euros to support the implementation phase of the restart of the business. One thing that we've included, which is quite novel, but again, it was through feedback that we had through the various consultations we have, is psychological support to entrepreneurs, where basically Malta Enterprise will fund specialized programs intended for psychological support to entrepreneurs that had to close down their business and would like to restart again. Smart and Sustainable Investment Scheme. This is a scheme that we are giving a lot of importance, even in the regeneration phase. This will be, of course, the next phase after the first cash injection. And the idea here is to assist companies to kickstart investment and investment cycle after the pandemic. So we have the change to grow, and businesses can look at their business model. They want to change. If they want to change anything, they will have the possibility to ask advisors to give them advice on how to change their business. Basically, it's also giving a clear policy direction in terms of new economic niches that we want to go as a country, and in line with the European Green Deal. We will be this will be quite a large scheme in terms of the smaller enterprises, because we will be giving cash grants up to 50,000 euros for any investments in in particular sectors that will be in the guidelines, but basically they will be in sustainable investments, digitization, smart processes, green green jobs, and anything that would be innovative in the business. We will also give an additional 20% support in the form of tax credits, which then would push the business to go through a phase where they have profits, further profits, and through the scheme, they would be able to tap into 20% tax credits. Where, of course, the minister referred to this, and also the chamber referred to this, but cash grants will be increased when investments are made in Gozo. This is something that we look very favorably at, as most of you would know. A number of schemes are specifically either for Gozo or specifically tailored to be more advantageous for Gozo businesses. And in this case, we will be doing this as well. Investments made by startups. So we will be pushing startups to take that step in the direction of entrepreneurship, as well as investments which directly create green jobs. Of course, further details will be given in the guidelines that we are currently working on. Extending the tax credit certificate issued through Microinvest scheme. This is something that is now available on our website through regeneration.maltaenterprise.com, and we will be extending the tax certificates which are due for expiring 2021, 2022, and 2023. We will be extending them by 3 years respectively, that is 2024, 2025, and 2026. In this way, Of course, you'd understand, and we do understand that 2020, 2021, 2022, and possibly 2023 were challenging times. So basically, we saw the tax credits that were coming through out of microinvest and decided to extend the possibility to use the certificates over the next 3 years. That is all. Of course, for further information, there's also the website regeneration.maltaenterprise.com, and one important tool for businesses to get into more detail, particularly when cases are very specific, is to call the Business First call center 144, where you can have more information, and we can assist through any one of the persons answering the phone on helpline 144. I think that was a quick roundup, and myself and possibly Steve will be in a position to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Kurt. I now open the floor to any questions you might have. There are already some questions. I'll put them here. So one of the questions we have is the first one: where is it possible to be registered as a business advisor eligible for the scheme? I think it was the one relating to, Kurt, you mentioned earlier, the one relating to business advisory services.
Okay, we've done that in collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce. So basically, advisors went through a process to be in a position to be on a list, basically, where we recommend. Of course, it does not exclude other advisors. So the list is there just as a guidance to businesses who want advisors that through a selection process, which was not a gruesome selection process, let's be clear. But we know that the advisors that are on that list have experience, and we've asked for experience in business reengineering of various businesses in the past. Just to be clear, the Chamber of Commerce had asked for at least 3 instances where the advisors have performed a business reengineering exercise with companies. Of course, it does not exclude, I must stress this, it does not exclude any other advisors that would want to work on a business reengineering of a particular business and apply through the Malta Enterprise scheme. So whilst we suggest that advisors are on the list, we will not stop any advisors from performing work for other businesses that are not on the list, basically.
Thank you, Kurt. May I ask you a question? So if I'm a new advisor, but I would want to get on list because obviously persons would have further peace of mind if I'm on that list. Is there a process how I could get on that list as a business advisor?
In that case, I would suggest that they speak to the Chamber of Commerce because they are basically handling that list. But again, I stress that we will not exclude anyone who is not on that list.
Okay, but I think they would need to give some proof in terms of experience or
yes, in the case of research, there will be a process, and again, there will be advisors, but we won't be excluding anyone.
Thank you. Another questions that we have is, you mentioned the top-up rent support scheme. Could you give further details on the eligibility criteria, as it was not very clear?
The only eligible criteria that is different, criterion that is different from last year's, is that businesses would have had to be closed according to legal notice 90 of 2021 and 94 of 2021. The rest, basically, in terms of the rent support scheme, that will be 50% of whatever the business got through last year's rent support. And in case of new applicants, they would have a capping of half the 2,500 euros. So it's 1,250 euros. So the maximum capping that a business can take over their rental contract is of 1,250. And then there's a list which is published on the website whereby those that have 2 outlets would get double that amount, up to 7 and over 7, over 5 outlets.
Thank you, Kurt. I see we have one question on the chat regarding the scheme. Are tax credits which expire in 2020 extended as well, please?
No, 2020 no, because those are on costs incurred in 2019, which is before the pandemic.
Okay, thank you. Another question. In the Change to Grow 2021 scheme, you mentioned specific resources dedicated to support scheme take-up. Could you provide further details on the aspect of specific resources that you mentioned there?
That's as Malta Enterprise. So basically, internally, we will ensure that Malta Enterprise has the necessary know-how and expertise to assist businesses that want to restart. So basically, we will not tell you go and find any advisor and come back for the implementation phase, but internally, we would have the necessary resources to ensure that there is follow-up to the businesses that are restarting.
So another question, I brought down the is the Smart and Sustainable Investment Scheme available also for non-profit organizations, particularly in the field of renewable energy investment support? I'll put it, Kurt, again. Is the Smart and Sustainable Investment Scheme available also for non-profit organizations, particularly in the field of renewable energy investment support?
On this, we'll need to check the specific case, I believe, because if it's a social enterprise, it's one thing. If it's a non-profit organization, would not fall under the remit of Malta Enterprise since it's not a business. But of course, if there's a specific case, we'd be very happy to assist by calling either to Business First, using the various channels that we have to communicate with Malta Enterprise.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to the next question. Is the Restart Incentive Scheme you mentioned? You mentioned the Restart Incentive Scheme. Could you give further details on the eligible initiatives under the scheme? I understand that it's still in the making, but perhaps.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, in the Restart Incentive Scheme, you mentioned the eligible initiatives. Could you give further details on what these eligible initiatives or indications, what will they constitute?
We are in the process of developing the guidelines, but will be as wide as possible to include businesses as much as possible. Of course, let's keep in mind that this is a consultancy that we're offering, as well as further cash and a further grant to implement that plan that would come from advisors.
Thank you very much.
We will not be narrow or excluding.
Okay, thanks. Another question. This now relates to the wage supplement. I know that we were talking also about other schemes, but I think, as I said earlier, also in my introduction, I think the wage supplement was one of the main assistance that the government has provided and is still providing. One said, the minister in the introduction mentioned that the wage supplement will continue till the end of the year. This also applies for new employees which are employed in 2021.
No, as you know, we had included earlier this year replacements of employees. So new employees would not be eligible, but in case of replacement of employees, so if an employee leaves and you need to replace that employee that is already on a wage supplement, in that case, the new employee would get the wage supplement, but not an additional employee. Very clear, a replacement of an employee.
Okay, thanks very much. We'll go to the next question. As regards the smart and sustainable investment scheme, we are aware that this will be tweaked favorably towards Gozo. So you mentioned that cash grants will be increased in the case of investments made in Gozo. When the person asked, could you give at this stage an indication on this as regards?
No, I think it's a bit early to be in a position to give any details at this stage. Of course, we won't be prolonging much, but the first priority at the moment is to ensure that we get the cash injection right and as quick as possible. So the smart and sustainable investment scheme, we're already working on it, but we do not have details on the guidelines. Of course, when we are in a position to give further details, I'm very happy to answer any questions and even do a specific seminar on the smart and sustainable investment scheme at a later stage.
Yes, thank you. Obviously, as a chamber, we hope that this will be the best possible, with the best possible.
100% assistance, right?
We are always lobbying for this, but thanks for thanks for Steve for the patience as well. But but the second part of the question was, I think this perhaps could be answered like a practical example of eligible investment under this smart. I understand that the main intention of government also in our discussions both with Steve and with Malta Enterprise, we as a chamber have outlined that Gozo at the moment is to focus on certain niches like tourism, which in times of the pandemic has shown the fragility of the Gozo economy. And we also have certain sectors which are overwhelming, like they give the double in terms of gross value added, like construction, real estate. So as a chamber, we have spoken a lot on diversifying the Gozo economy and of moving the Gozo economy in particular directions. And I think the smart and sustainable investment schemes will answer this need. But this, within the same question, there was also a second part, in the sense, I think that we could give a practical example of eligible investment under the scheme.
Of course, whatever I say does not exclude any other ideas, but one particular idea would be assisting on ways on how to dispose of waste, recycling, and similar activities, for instance. But it's a bit we're a bit at an early stage to be very concrete about which form of businesses will be, or which more than business, what sort of projects will be included in the investment scheme. I don't know if Steve wants to add anything on this.
Steve. Right. I will make a roundup at the end and perhaps involve Steve as well. So, Steve, you're mute, Steve.
Hi, Daniel.
Guys, Steve, because there was a question indicating, like at this stage, perhaps could there be a practical example of eligible investments under the Smart and Sustainable Investment Scheme? Kurt outlined, for example, if I interpret you well, Kurt, the like waste recycling and other.
Yes.
And I spoke also of the need that there should be, I think, one of the ethos of this scheme, the main thinking will be that to diversify the goods and economy, and that is why the incentive will be higher for goods. So people are asking perhaps if we could give a practical example of eligible investment under this scheme at this stage.
Yes, the idea of this scheme essentially, Daniel, is to, as we were discussing before, is to actually give a policy direction as well to cross-sectorial investments from different companies in areas which are the areas really of the future. So we would like Maltese companies and consulting companies, of course, to have a clear investment direction in those areas which will make our companies more resilient in the future. And I think the front-end digitalization of many companies is very important, particularly for smaller companies like ours. And this scheme is also intended towards sustaining this kind of investment. So investment, anything which is digital, which enables our companies to go digital, to go smarter, to have a product suite, for example, which is a greener product suite. One issue which we have in Malta is this. I think that there is significant potential for a virtually untapped market of a strong customer base, which is more sensitive to greener products. And we have a lot of very good companies which could diversify their product suite towards ecological products, for example. So really and truly, this is something which will probably enable our companies to diversify their suite of services, their suite of products in areas which are smarter, more digital, and therefore and also greener and more sustainable. So I would say this is a scheme which is very much cross-sectorial. It's not intended towards one particular segment of the market or towards one particular industry, and it's not intended towards one particular segment of greener or smarter development. It's quite a wide scheme, and of course, once we have the eligibility designed, we would probably be able to sustain investment in a quite a generous manner in these areas which make our companies smarter, more digital, and more sustainable, not just in their operations, but of course in their product suite as well.
Thank you very much, Steve, for your
very important. A very important aspect is digitization of business. So any major investment by companies to digitize their business, being it going fully online, but not simply having just a website, but having a proper platform for their products, including backend systems. Those sort of projects will definitely be considered very favorably, particularly in sectors that need to go even more digital to reach a wider market, either in Malta, but also internationally. And that is one aspect that is very important, given that we are in the webinar with the Gozo Business Chamber for Gozitan companies that want to take their products outside of Malta and Gozo shores. And that is where we would be stressing the idea of giving a further incentive to Gozitan businesses.
So I think this will apply also to those offering services, like digital services. Am I right there?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you. Because that is an area which we are very earmarking at the chamber, because government has made significant investments in Gozo, the Digital Innovation Hub, the second fiber optic link. So I think this incentive will be a game changer in terms of pushing forward that the investment that we need in Gozo, diversifying the economy and putting that extra notch on new areas here in Gozo. So I'll go to the other questions. So I'll try to reword a bit these questions. It applies to the tourism sector, particularly the hotels. Today, you mentioned various investments apart from the wage supplement. A person asked, what would be the schemes that can support, for example, the hotel industry? These schemes that we were speaking of today, what will be the schemes that can be applied to the hotel industry?
Basically, the larger parts of our incentives are all open to the accommodation industry. So that's part of the business, the BPA, and basically they can be assisted through our schemes.
So thank you very much. Kurt, Steve, if you would like to intervene, please feel free to do so. The last, the question that we have. So this person asked, the sustainable investment from businesses, will they be specifically targeted on some focused goals or objectives? Perhaps we could give further details on you already highlighted, perhaps Steve could intervene here in terms of what will be the goals of the smart and sustainable investment scheme in terms of objectives.
Of course, as part of the process of evaluating projects and as part of enticing businesses to use the scheme, there will be specific targets where we want to push. So, for instance, once I already mentioned earlier, waste. That would be one of the areas that we would target. These, I think, should first of all, we are starting to develop the guidelines, and I think at a later stage it would be very beneficial to meet up and discuss even before having a final version of the guidelines, so that we, given the interest that there is from Gozo, so that we have the feedback of the businesses themselves to see what sort of projects they would be interested to undertake, and will take them into consideration when designing the guidelines.
Thank you very much, Kurt, and thanks also for the offer. So, Steve, I don't know if you would like to add something on this.
Not much, really. Of course, this idea of having a two-way communication is proven to be very, very beneficial. And of course, the industry itself, it's always at the core of this decision-making process. So the idea is for these schemes to be effective and to have a strong take-up of these schemes. So the idea is to, of course, involve the industry in this process as well. Just as we did with the rest of the incentive package before.
Yes, Mark.
I just wanted to add a point. Obviously, I perfectly understand that the trust for the moment is cash grants to fill up the gaps that they currently have. Another innovative feature of the current product, which is being launched in the market, is the fact that previously if a business would be taking a grant for a particular investment, right, he could not benefit from the financial benefit subsidy in the loan, right? So there was a complete segregation between the two. You either take a cash grant or you take Jamie or Jeremy. And so the business had to choose. An additional feature in the new product to make it easier is a degree of blending, which basically means, just to give you a practical example, if there is a business who is planning an investment of potentially 100,000 in the energy efficiency space or renewable, and he gets a grant of, let's say, 50,000, the financing from the bank could consider the other 50,000, where the grant component would be considered as a contribution. So this is a way of trying to bring them closer. Obviously, our argument was they would have a cash flow problem. We should allow us to finance the 100. But the arguments from the Commission were that, listen, from a new regulations, EU funding point of view, you could finance the component which is not financed by the grant. So this is a way of maybe for businesses when they are structuring financing products. Obviously, I perfectly understand that businesses at the moment looking for grants, and I would, if I was in the business field, I would clearly go down that route. But if someone can complement that financing also with the lending component, we are currently exploring that option as well.
Thanks, Mark. So another question for Malta Enterprise. It has come not through the system, but through our social media. And Kurt, it regards the rental scheme. About that, the legal notice mentions retail outlets, the closure of retail outlets. So if a person has stores, which obviously the retail outlets does not stand alone, and people would have stores related to that activity, to that business activity, will they be falling, the stores, under the scheme?
If the business is getting a wage supplement and have a wage supplement number and have already applied for the scheme last year, they would be eligible, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So now, basically, I will be closing this webinar, but I will be asking each of you.
Of course, just to be very clear, because my colleagues
yes, good.
are pointing out, of course, the number of outlets. So they would be linked also to employment. So if there's a garage where there are no employees and it's storing products for the main outlet, in that case they wouldn't be eligible for that. But if in the case that there is a wage supplement on a wage supplement application and they applied last year and they were eligible, then they would be eligible also for this top-up. I don't know if it was clear, but if you have a store and you apply for two outlets, the main retail outlet and the store, then in that case it wouldn't count as two.
Okay, it would count as one.
Unless they employ more than 10, of course.
Yes. Okay.
The criteria are quite clear in the sense that they are online, and the idea here is that if you have two outlets and you employ more than 10, in that case you are eligible.
Okay.
Maybe.
Thanks. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Sorry, I don't have here the table which I can share because then we could be in a position to go through it, but I don't have it here. I'm sorry.
Okay, don't worry, we can give then the clarification to the person who asked it, because the person are following us also on our Facebook page. I would like to have a round with our panelists here prior to closing. I will start in this order. I will have the intervention first of Mark, Scicluna Bartoli, then of Kurt, and possibly also of Steve and Lou. And then I will have the intervention of the president of the Gozo Business Chamber, Joseph Borg, as a closing comment. So, Kurt, from you, you would like to have a closing comment to this webinar.
Okay, shall I go or Mark?
Sorry, Mark.
Okay, if you want, I think I had my fair share of talking this morning. Of course, we're very open to any feedback that you have, and any questions, as I explained earlier, can be made to Business First on Helpline 144, or else through the various channels online that we have, including email, and we'll try to answer as efficiently as possible. What I would like to stress is that sometimes, due to the large number of requests and questions that we have, we may take some time. In that case, first of all, apologies, and please be patient, but we're dealing with thousands and thousands of requests on a daily basis, and sometimes it is a bit technical and laborious, so we would be in a position to either call back or email back within the space of a day, maximum a week.
So, thank you very much, Kurt. Mark, from you, a closing comment to this webinar.
I think seeing all the various different schemes, eligible cost, eligible enterprises, I think there's a little bit of a gap in the market to help businesses really lever the best financing option for them, because there are so many. And I have a feeling that, and I understand the machine gun approach, it's perfectly correct, because there are so many businesses that need assistance. Potentially, just going back to my previous example, you can structure your financing in many different ways to try and leverage the best benefit for your business by attacking different forms of financing, be it cash, be it tax incentive, be it lending. I think there's a bit of a gap in providing businesses that kind of insight. I understand in the energy efficiency space, there will be a number of advisors who can start to provide this. But I think it's across the board, not just in the energy space, where this gap is going to be featuring, where businesses need help to structure all these kind of incentives to their best ability. So maybe, but otherwise, the amount of incentives, as we have seen, are very significant. How to structure them now, I think, is going to be a challenge.
Yes, for sure. I think Kurt, Steve have a lot of work ahead on the schemes, because we are, as we saw during this webinar, there is already a lot of interest on the eligibility criteria, on the details. So I think there is a lot of hard work. But an aspect that we mentioned, I would mentioned earlier by myself, by the president, is the element of consultation that was involved. To this end, I would be very, if I would not involve Steve alone, with whom we have constant discussion, to make his closing comment. Steve.
No, it's as you're saying, Daniel, I think it's very encouraging to see businesses, Maltese businesses and Gozo businesses, of course, being so proactive in giving ideas and giving tangible and practical suggestions on schemes or incentives which could support their regeneration, now that we are in this particular and very, very sensitive juncture of our economic cycle. So I think the most important thing that we've taken on board in the last 14 months is this kind of open channel of communication, which is really bearing fruit. And I think it's something which we should treasure. It's something which we should keep on taking forward in the coming weeks and the coming months, in order to make sure that this hard work that's being put in the design and setting up of these schemes will eventually develop into effective take-up and effective investment. So I think that's something which is very, very important. We should really nurture it and leverage upon it. Just take a note out of Mark's comments as well. It's very important. It's very important to have banks on board, and it's very, very, very encouraging to see that banks are really into supporting businesses, not just on conventional lending, but also on sustainable related investments. And undoubtedly, all this couldn't take place without the commitment and support of entities like banks, but also entities like Malta Enterprise, of course, which is very actively and very tangibly involved in, on a day-to-day basis, ensuring that the required support necessary for the business is actually delivered as rapidly as possible. And this wouldn't be made possible without the real commitment of the people within Kurt and within Kurt's team. So I think it's something very important. I think businesses are really appreciating in these last months.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks also, Kurt. This open channel of communication and collaboration, I think, is very important, and the schemes were fruit of this collaboration. And when you have schemes which are made through collaboration with the stakeholders, it will be more easy then to enable take-up by these stakeholders, because the stakeholders would have had a very important input in their formulation. But thanks very much for your sterling work. I communicate continuously with Steve, so I know the hard work that they really put into these efforts. So I now ask Joseph Borg, the president of the Gozo Business Chamber, for his closing comment on this webinar.
I won't be taking much of your time, obviously, but I am indeed very grateful to all those who have participated. Mark Scicluna Bartoli and the bank, Steve and Kurt, CEO Malta Enterprise, we are very grateful for your help and want to thank you also for participating in this seminar. Just one final point. We have been asking for these schemes to be tweaked positively for Gozo businesses. Okay, sorry, because I just vanished, I suppose. Okay, I've come from
down under.
So, no, I was speaking about tweaking these incentives for Gozo businesses, and we would sincerely hope that this is done as soon as possible, because people here are updating us with questions, and would be extremely grateful if we come back with answers as soon as possible. That was it, basically. I thank also Daniel and his team. Daniel and Richard here in this room have helped to make this possible. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
So we now come to the end of our webinar. We now come to the end of our webinar. I would like to thank you all for accepting our invitation, those who have registered through our platform and those who are following us on social media. We find this very useful on social media, because people who would not have time to follow this webinar, then they go onto social media and they can follow it up there. The feedback that we have is very positive. I would like to thank again the Honorable Minister, Miriam Dalli, Mark Scicluna Bartoli, Kurt Farrugia, and Steve Alloon. A special note of thanks goes to Richard Gregg, who was the technical coordinator for this webinar. Thanks, Richard. Today we have inaugurated our new equipment here at the office of the Gozo Business Chamber, which will enable our work to be more proactive. We also, as a chamber, had also to change the way we work. So this new equipment will enable us also to do better webinars and also to put our message across in a more effective way. This was also possible through the Ministry for Gozo NGO Assistance Scheme, which is a funding program for voluntary organizations here on the island of Gozo. So I would like to thank all those of you who are following us, who follow us on our webpage, Facebook page, on all our media. And thank you all for joining us today.